Afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your patience. Apparently we worked the gremlins out of the machine, so we're ready to go. Up next, Mr. Haggie, you're going to continue us here. Thank you.
Just to kick to the boards, there are people from Kitchener Public Library and Centre in the Square are here to answer questions today. They are not intending to be here next week. So if you have questions about operating or capital, today would be the day to ask those.
That's helpful. Thank you. So with that, I'd like to invite the members from the KPL up.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, we're all pleased here. We came out full forces here. We're all pleased here today to talk about Kitchener Public Library's 2025 operating budget. I do want to thank Council. I met a lot of you one-on-one when I first arrived here about 6 months ago. And I want to thank you all for the very warm welcome and for also expressing your support of the library as a valued asset of the community. Also to CAO Dan Chapman and the rest of the city team for their partnership and collaboration and helping guide me through my first 6 months. Of course, to the amazing library team who are back in the office for their ongoing work to serve the community, and to the KPL board for everything they do every month at our meetings. This past year, we've continued to find ways to create new value for our customers. KPL was actually just shortlisted, hot off the press, for 2 Ontario Ministry Public Library Service Awards, which we're really proud of. We're only one of 2 libraries, actually, who were nominated for 2 different projects within that award. We also installed a new dedicated reflection room at Central Library this past year for those looking for quiet space for prayer or for reflection or meditation. In a few weeks, we'll launch library lockers at Chandler Mowat and Victoria Hills community centres. That was part of a pilot project that was actually approved last year at Council. And in early 2025, as everyone knows, we are going to be opening the Southwest Community Library. And it's going to have a demonstration kitchen as well to help us build on the popular food literacy program that we do throughout the system. We want to thank Council, of course, for the additional funding for Southwest. It really enables important library services to grow throughout the city. In addition to being a wonderful anchor for a new community, it'll also be the first public net zero building in the region and one of the first net zero libraries in the country. I'm also proud to let you know that next month, KPL will be launching its new strategic plan. The plan builds off Council's vision of a caring and thriving community. It centers on creating and improving services together with the people who are using them, and it aims to reduce barriers to access through our physical and digital experiences so that all of our experiences are as equitable and as inclusive as possible. The plan leverages the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the Canadian Index for Wellbeing to ensure that our services lead to outcomes that improve people's lives. Our Director of Business Services, Angela Riddell, is right here with me to answer any questions afterwards. She was supposed to come up, but she's battling a little cold, so we're going to save her voice, and I will walk us through the budget slides. So to begin with, I'm happy to let you know that our operating budget has come in and falls within the allocation that we received from the city. We'll soon be opening our new Southwest Community Library, as I mentioned, and the 2025 budget includes a full year of operations. It's a significant and appreciated funding allocation the Council made for this new branch. And as I mentioned, supporting the southwest end of the city was really important to that neighborhood and really important to us as well, so we do appreciate it. Another significant change at KPL this year includes staff voting to unionize in 2024. We're currently in bargaining on our first collective agreement with CUPE. While we haven't finalized yet most of the significant monetary issues, we have worked diligently to cost out a number of the union's monetary proposals in preparation for this budget meeting and to meet the funding allocation from the city. We are of the view that the budget we are presenting today includes the costs that we believe would be a reasonable and sustainable collective agreement for our valued employees. Staff continue to look for opportunities for revenue growth and supplemental activities such as venue rentals. We've had some beautiful weddings and cultural events as part of a growing area of revenue for us. And they're booked at Central all the time. And we've already begun to receive inquiries about venue rental bookings at Southwest as well. On the expense side, you'll see in the programs and resources line, there's an increase, and that increase is actually due to the addition of Southwest. Outside of that, to help balance our budget, we've actually either reduced or frozen our 2025 budget lines for library services across the system, such as programming and collection resources. This all leads to a proposed 2025 operating budget of just under $14.8 million. And now I'm going to hand it off to our Library Board Chair, Catherine Andrews, who wants to say a few words as well.
Thanks, Darren, and thanks, Angela, for all the work you've done. Good afternoon, council members. This is my 9th year as a volunteer on the KPL Library Board and my 3rd as chair. The board cares a lot about our community and the people who live here. We take our responsibilities seriously and are very proud of the important work that the library does day in and day out as they continue to adapt to a changing environment. To that end, it's important for me to be here today on behalf of the board to show our support for library staff and to recommend the operating budget to you. The board believes staff have done a responsible job balancing the library's commitment to public service with the unknowns in its operating environment, such as a new collective agreement and the changing social landscape. The board is also excited for the library's ambitious new strategic plan that will launch next month. It strives to strengthen our approach, not just to public service activities, but also to how we do that work, to ensure that we're continually able to evolve our services to meet tomorrow's needs. Our vision hopes to see everyone using the library throughout their lives to enhance their well-being. And on behalf of the board, we thank council for your ongoing collaborations, and we hope you continue to support the meaningful work that the library does for so many people in future years. Thank you.
That's good. Thanks so much. Just actually, before we get into questions, one thing I forgot to ask from earlier in the day is whether there's any potential conflicts of interest in this. So I would ask now by raise of hand. Councillor Stretch, 1 second here. Go ahead.
So I have a conflict on item 3.1BA. The conflict is because my partner is currently employed with the KPL.
Thank you kindly. Okay, and if you want to queue back in then for questions of the KPL. Thank you very much for your presentation. Councillor Singh, I'm not sure if you're here because you're live or if you have a question. Go ahead.
No, I had a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Councillor Dave. Yeah, thank you. I would think I have a conflict because I love the library, but I think you can get past that one. Darren, I appreciate the presentation, and the Chandler Moore community is incredibly excited to get the kiosks. It's just one way from them to feel more at home and connected with the library and access, even though the one close to St. Mary's High School is within walking distance, but it just provides that more connectivity. To that note, my question was going to be, as the library looks at the strategic plan, what type of data collection or ongoing updates would be even annually provided to council and seeing what type of activity is happening in our various different branches, the number of usage? Is it going upward? Is it going downward? Is there stagnation? Is that data that's collected by the library itself?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Singh. I did miss one piece about the specific type of data, but I think you're asking, generally speaking, not just for the library lockers, what kind of data we'll be collecting, and it's a great question. So as part of the strategic...
Yeah, not the library lockers, the general data.
Yeah, so...
In the various different branches.
And thanks for that. So through the chair, the strategic plan is not actually fully approved yet. We're actually hoping to get it approved at this month's board meeting. Once the strategic plan is approved, it has a whole bunch of different areas within it, different actions, different strategic choices that we've made. And the next step to that is actually to start to strengthen. We actually have an action in the strategic plan around strengthening our data collection and strengthening our use of data throughout the organization. And so once we launch the plan, one of the first jobs we have is to actually start to build out a data strategy that will support the strategic plan. A big piece of the strategic plan is actually shifting, if I can use some business terms, from products and services to impacts and outcomes. And so what we want to do, using UN sustainability goals, sustainability development goals, using Canadian Index of Wellbeing, is we want to ladder up the work that we're doing and plan everything around recognized outcomes. So we are doing the work currently right now to define the outcomes that we're going to use to plan our work against. And then once we do that, we're going to figure out a measurement strategy to actually measure along the way to understand the indicators that are helping us understand whether we're moving the needle on the areas that we're working towards. And that, of course, will be a plan that will be presented to the board at some time, and happy next year, Councillor Singh, or at any other time once that's figured out, to bring that to Council as well.
Yeah, no, I love that, the fact that data will be the driving factor, and I think that would be a helpful measure for Council to see how the library board and its leadership is animating these unique spaces in our various different neighborhoods. So that's the data that I was hoping to, that would be derived. And beyond that, I think that's a good way about, actions and items. The libraries are moving, transitioning, not just for a place of, taking up books or, going in reading, but more of an experience as well as a safe space. And especially with the advent of technology, is there anything that's being considered as part of the 2025 budget that's going to push that needle upward? Just as giving it as an example, so you have a reference point of what I'm talking about. AR or VR technology, where people can explore beyond just as aspect of learning, beyond the books, but experiences as well. Is there something that's being encouraged or transitioned towards that as well?
It's a great question through the chair. Sorry, thanks. So yes, actually in our strategic plan, we actually have an action area that is around advancing our approach to digital, basically. And that's not just for our customers, but that's actually internally as well. How can AI help us do better work? For example, how can we start to look at automation within the work that we do? There's no set budget put to it now because we actually don't know what that looks like. But the work that can happen doesn't require any budget right now. Once we have an idea of what we actually want to execute, that's when we would come forward and we potentially might need to assign some dollars to it.
Thank you. Up next is Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you very much, Darren. And I don't really have much questions. I know you have a big team here, so can you introduce who the team is here?
Absolutely. I'm going to try to do this where I'm still talking to the mic. So we have Nathan Stretch over here. Nathan Stretch leads our community development, which includes a few different areas. It includes areas such as, I was talking about the different wedding celebrations that would happen and the venue rentals. That falls under Nathan, as well as a team called Community Connections that helps our at-risk population achieve safe and successful visits when they come to the library. We have Kristen Johnson-Perlock here. Kristen is the head of our operations and information services, and she's doing a fantastic job bringing all of our community libraries together. We have Lori, who leads our collections, and Lori leads actually data. So Councillor Singh can actually ask Lori questions directly on data. Lisa leads HR over here, which is, I guess, the shortest portfolio we can talk about, HR, because everyone knows what that is. And of course, Angela, Business Services, and Catherine, who you met, is our board chair. Thanks for the question.
Well, thank you for all coming, because it's good to get to know who the staff are, because most of the time we don't really see who the staff are.
Absolutely, yeah, and they deserve a lot of credit because, you know, it's easy for me to stand up here and read the words, but there's a ton of work that's done in the background, and this is the team that does it, amongst others, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Hernandez. Up next is Councillor Michaud.
I don't have any questions. I just have a comment. I just want to thank you for your presentation and thank you for all the staff coming out. We're so lucky to have the libraries in our community, and I'll speak to the library at Pioneer Park Community Center. I was at there this past Saturday, meet and greet with the councillor, and people are coming in and out of that library. Like it's just constantly churning with people coming in and spending time, and little ones renting, borrowing toys and bringing them back. It's just wonderful. So thank you for all the work you do, and I really do enjoy being on this board. Thanks.
Thank you. We love having you on the board.
Thank you, Councillor Michaud. Sorry, question for the clerk, if I could. I do have 2 members that would like to speak that aren't showing up in my queue, so I'm not sure how to queue them in, I guess. Okay. Councillor Johnson and Councillor Deneau. Okay, so Councillor Johnson first, please. Go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. And thank you, Darren. And thank you, library team. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you all for coming in today, and thank you for all the work on the budget. Darren, you've stepped in to a big job with lots on the go, and you've brought in great ideas and enthusiasm, and bringing along a great team who is willing to work and to move forward. And we're really, I'm going to say, refreshed by your ideas as well. So it's exciting to see the trajectory that the library continues on. Lots of interesting times ahead, and I just want to say thank you to all of the staff, the volunteers, to Darren as well, because I know how much work that you put in. I know it's your heart as well, and that really, really shows. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I figured this out. There's actually 5 people in the queue. Up next is Councillor O'Dooney.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Darren, for coming in, and thanks for the presentation. Trying to multitask over here. My question is in line with Councillor Singh's earlier question. And we talked about data collection and things of the like, and I know you mentioned your strategic plan in session is coming up soon. For me, I'm just interested in trying to get a better understanding of what are the, and may I use the word customers? Maybe that's probably the word I should use. What are the customers asking for? I would say, and in line with what Councillor Singh said, what are they currently using the library for? It would be great to have those ideas. But then I know I've had many conversations with people around the library, myself included. I wasn't aware of some of the services that were being offered until I had that get together with you and the walk around, with the new Southwest Library that's going to be coming up. So how do we promote some of these services so people that don't usually come in are aware of some of the services that are offered in the library? So just thought to throw all that at you.
It's a great question, and it's one of the challenges a lot of libraries have because, certainly we offer such a broad variety of programming, of offerings. How do you actually start to let people who don't use the library know that this library is for them too, right? We strive to be relevant to everybody. At the same time, you also can't do everything for everybody. In our new strategic plan, I'm going to point to the plan again, but in our new strategic plan, there is actually a separate action item that actually speaks directly to the idea of connecting with the community and letting them know what we have and letting them know that, look, you may not be, a voracious reader, and that's okay because we have recording studios for you, or we have all these other services. And what we actually want to do is start elevating that, so it's not necessarily again about the book or the recording studio, but it's about the impact that we can have. And we feel that if we can start to help people understand the impact that we can have. And, we can help you be more confident, more digitally literate, more, whatever those indicators are that we land on. We feel that might connect with people who just look at the library as, a place for books, which a lot of people realistically still do. So we want to try to break that, and we want to really try to show the community everything that's available to them and how it will connect with them. And part of that also involves target marketing. You can go out with one message to everybody, or you can decide to go out and try to target people through different techniques, mainly digital techniques, and say, this is for you neighborhood, or this is for you, a psychographic, or, interest. So trying to be smarter in how we market is something we want to do as well.
Thank you. I think speaking of podcast, Councillor Schneider and I will probably start a counselor podcast or something.
Absolutely. Counselors at the library, let's name it.
Thank you, Councillor Deneau.
Thanks, Chair Davey, and thanks, Darren, for coming. That's a great idea, actually. And that's kind of a segue into my first comment. It's, the libraries have changed dramatically since all of us were kids. It's not that boring, old, stale, got to be quiet place to go and read and do work, and so much more. And so I, thank the past board members and chair and the current members and employees for making that a lively experience at the library. But my question, Darren, and this may be part of your strategic plan coming forward sometime soon. You mentioned the community center libraries, and I know did we agree to trial that 2 years ago? 2 years ago? I know before your time. So where are we in relation to assessing how those have gone?
Sorry, are you talking about the libraries that are connected to
No, remember we talked about, you're looking at me like I have four eyes right now. We agreed to have trial
with the book I'm sorry, with the library lock, the kiosks?
Yes, the kiosk, yeah.
Yes.
So remind me where we are within that trial period.
Absolutely. So it was approved last year here at Council, December 9th.
Last year?
Ish, I'm going to say.
Okay.
December 9th-ish is when we're looking at launching them. They're in Chandler Mowat, they're in Victoria Hills. Staff there, by the way, have been fantastic to work with, so shout out to city staff as well. Both lockers are both sets of lockers. They're going to have pickup slots. So you can order an item and we will ship it to that community center. We will put it in that little slot, and then you'll have a code and you can go and you can get it out. We'll also have a few catalog items that you can actually take out while you're there as well. We're going to have a range of adult and children's materials, print fiction, graphic novels, picture books, audio picture books, multilingual materials. Our goal is we want to set this up for success as much as possible. So we will have a team out helping create library cards, helping bring awareness to it as well when it first launches. We also we'll be measuring along the way. We want to understand whether it's sustainable and whether it has impact. And so we're designing that measurement strategy. The sustainability part, it's great to have two of them. Is there an opportunity to have more if they work? What does that look like financially? What does that look like from an operating point of view? Those are all things we need to understand. And, at the end of the day, we have a hypothesis about why we're doing this. We want to be able to validate whether it's actually working or not. So those are some areas that we're going to be measuring. I will say, though, that we're already getting little tidbits of positive feedback. Somebody from the community center actually told us that when they were out and measuring for the space, there were a couple of residents there and asked, what's going on? And they mentioned the library lockers, and it turns out they were really excited for this to actually come. One of the people who was speaking actually had an accessibility issue and can't leave their neighborhood. And so they were very excited by the idea of the library coming to them.
Okay, and sorry, my apologies. I thought it was 2 years ago that we agreed to trial it. And So when are we, I guess, anticipating some information back on the trial regarding, like, are we going to go the whole year and see where we are next budget time? Can we get like a 6-month review? Because I believe there's a few other community centers that would benefit that are not close enough to to walk to a library that would benefit from this program as well.
For sure, and it's a great question through the chair. We have to obviously leave enough time so that the data is valid, but we're looking at about 6 months.
Okay.
So give or take, I will say 6 months is our first milestone from a data perspective.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Darren.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just by way of update, there's still 5 people in the queue, including my own questions. You guys are very popular. Up next is Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you all for being here. So I still like boring and old stale libraries, but I must commend you for how the library has transitioned into, meeting other needs in the community beyond just books. So I had a couple questions. You mentioned the food literacy program. And then you talk about impacts and outcomes. Is part of this program looking at food sovereignty, given that we have so many people using the food banks these days?
100%, and I'm just going to pull up a stat. So in 2022, there was a public inquiry called the Right to Read Inquiry, and it looked at human rights issues affecting students with reading disabilities. The Ontario Human Rights Commission heard accounts of students who talked about facing barriers because of the lack of evidence-based literacy instruction, and a lot of that had to do with basic things like reading a menu or reading a nutrition label. And when that came out, and I commend the team here at KPL for putting this on the KPL agenda, the program, the food literacy, nutrition literacy program is one of the nominated programs for the Ontario Ministry Awards. And it's expanded from a small, let's say, one-time thing into a system-wide initiative to the point where now Southwest has a full demonstration kitchen. And by demonstration kitchen, it's set up so that there's a projector above, and when work is being done at the kitchen, people who are sitting and watching the program will be able to see it projected, much like you would a cooking show or whatnot. But we do everything from basic skills with food packaging and understanding nutrition labels and, understanding recipes and, knife skills and really basic skills. So it's a really important program for us. And yes, it certainly does fit up into one of the outcome areas that we talk about.
Right, thank you. The other question I had was regarding the interlibrary loan partners that you have. I just wondered what they are and how far it extends.
It's a great question. I'm just going to bring up Lori to talk about that.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Yes, so the interlibrary loan system is part of the past system that was dissolved when OLS, or it's part of the OLS system. So there's many different partners right now. I could get you a list if you'd like me to do a follow-up of how many different libraries we partner with. But that one's becoming more involved as well, as we're currently working on a project for basically for them to have better integration into our catalog system so that more people across Southern Ontario will be able to tell what we have and will be able to borrow more materials. So ongoing project, but I can certainly get you the list of libraries and the number.
That'd be great, thank you. My last question is, I know community centers have been mentioned, but not every neighborhood association is connected or has a community center as such. Do you anticipate going out to the different neighborhood associations and just sort of pitching your, the wonderful things that the library does? Because that without that, you could lose a lot of people, right? Because of there are many neighborhood associations without that community center in their backyard.
Yeah, I think there's an old model that says we'll wait for people to come to us. We certainly operate in a more modern approach where we go out to people as well. So there's a lot of constant collaboration. We certainly get I think people aren't shy to send us emails about what they think about the library. But certainly, yes, going out, we do focus groups for the strategic plan. We went to Conestoga College and we talked to students about what they think and what they need. So outreach is constantly part of our ongoing work, for sure.
Right. Thank you, and thank you for what you bring to the community.
Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Mayor Rabinovich.
Thanks, Chair Davey, and thank you for the whole team for coming in today and for all of the great work you're doing. Very excited about the Southwest Community Library opening early in the new year, as I know many in the community are as well. It's been a few years since we've opened our last branch, and it'll be wonderful to see this location open up to serve that part of that quickly growing part of the city. One of the other things that's been changing is the diversity of our community, and I know one of the things we hear about in doing that is how we continue to grow and serve those communities, particularly in terms of international language resources and others. And wondering if you can just talk a little bit about what we're doing to support that aspect of our holdings and meeting those needs in the community.
Absolutely, and growing diversity, and a really important part of what libraries and certainly KPL does as well. As I mentioned in my speaking points a few minutes ago, we did open, for example, the Reflection Room this past year. And I can tell you, as soon as we opened it, it became very popular, and we got a lot of feedback thanking us for it. We've also done separate newcomer report to inform programming. I mentioned the focus group that we did at Conestoga. We have ongoing work all the time. We look at our multilingual collection, and we work to expand that collection, representative of the needs of the community. And it's not just in a blanket way, but what do different libraries need in their areas and neighborhoods. Staff diversity training. We certainly recognize various holidays and events through different types of cultural programming. What I'm really pleased with is through our strategic planning. Our new plan actually has a separate action item around what you might call equity design. And what it's really saying is there's going to be a specific initiative that focuses on addressing barriers and inequities with regards to library access. And we feel that's a really, really important way to connect with the community, truly understand meaningfully what, where their gaps are in being able to access the services that they should be able to access, and how can we help improve that? And what are we not doing that they need that we can start?
Okay, great, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Up next is future KPL podcaster number 2, Dave Schneider.
Thank you. Proud KPL card carrier right here. I just want to echo all the great comments that have been said for you and your team. Thank you so much for ever expanding the different types of literacy that our library branches offer our community. It's absolutely wonderful. I just wanted to thank you too for being such a great venue. Two of the events that I really enjoyed at KPL were the Grand River Black Music Festival. It was a great place to showcase music and vendors, and the Elder Wisdom Bench was very touching for me to learn from the elders. So keep up the great work.
Thank you. And I will say the Grand River Black Music Festival, which Nathan actually spearheaded through the partnership, is actually the other nominated project for the Ontario Ministry Award for Innovation.
Excellent. That's great to hear. Before we go back for second round questions, I just have a couple. I've noticed once again that the provincial grant is frozen, and we tend to ask this question every year, but has there been any movement or notification at all about that potentially changing?
None at all. And we, the Grand Library community, continue to advocate with the government, and actually different levels of government, to try to increase funding for libraries. There still has been no movement on it, but it's certainly an area that many libraries would love addressed.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. And let us know if we can further assist in any way on that. My only other question is on the slide in front of us, actually, but I'm not sure if it's a question for you or our staff. But the grant allocation, and it may be tied up with the Southwest expansion, but the grant allocation is going up 2.6%. But just looking at the two top line numbers from the 2024 to the 2025 numbers, it's about $100,000 higher than that 2.6%. What am I missing on that? Mr. Haggie?
Through the chair, the 2025 amount is the, I believe, the 12.56 million and the 119, and then we inflated both that combined up by 2.6% for
Also, the 119 is inflated into the 13.01, basically.
Yeah, it's covered on the screen now, but yes, we took last year's total number and inflated that number by 2.6%.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. I have Councillor Singh. I believe you're in the queue for a second round. Unless that's a mistake. Go ahead.
Councillor Davey, I was going to make a quick comment, but I had a small question beforehand.
Yeah, go ahead.
Darren, I love the fact that there's going to be, nutritional learning or around food security. What type of other training programs are facilitated within the libraries? I'm looking at technology literacy, sustainability literacy, just to give an example of few.
Early childhood literacy, kindergarten ready, school readiness, certainly digital literacy. And literacy is a really broad word. So the work that we're doing with the outcomes that I mentioned right now is going to help us hone in on which, I'll say 5 different outcome areas we want to impact. And then what we'll do is we'll look at all the services that we have and all the programs that we offer, and we will, maybe change some, maybe adapt some, maybe add some new ones, maybe remove some so that we're more focused towards those outcomes. But library touches a lot of aspects of people's lives. There's democracy that we work with, access to information. People use us to make resume. People come just to be able to find a printer or use a computer. So the span of what we do helps people with very, very basic skills and access to technology, all the way up to, perhaps running a program on artificial intelligence and just letting people know what's happening.
Okay. Mr. Chair, just for my comment, if you could allow it, would that be okay?
Please go ahead.
Yeah. I think the impacts and outcomes is like a phenomenal way of measurement of the overall impact and benefit to community by the library. I think it's an extension of what we should be doing in our community centers, and we should be looking at it almost the same way, and it needs to be a sense of collaboration. And to the library and the board, Catherine, Darren, you both are phenomenal, the volunteer team of the board members, as well as, of course, Darren, yourself, your leadership team. You're continually trying to evolve what the library means to be in a community. And that access space is crucial. And that's why I'm saying it's part of the strategic plan. I would love for you to engage with our staff and seeing what type of synergies are there with the community centers. Because what happens in the library, as the services and the needs evolve in the library, are not very different than what's happening in the community centers. So that's just additional space. And I think there could be a lot of cross collaboration, especially where it's not necessarily a space for you or individuals to take up books, but where they can go and learn, where programs can be facilitated as well. And I'm just really excited by the direction that the Kitchener Library is heading, and just want to thank you and the board once more.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair Davey. And I did actually think of a question as Councillor Singh was talking, and I was going to say something much the same. I think a common thread that I'm hearing as well is that a lot of the things that are going on in our community centers that we're hearing from programming that is being asked for there is around things like resume writing, how to do a cover letter, et cetera. And perhaps this is a question for Michael May as well, but how to combine his group and you to have those conversations about some of those more common things that are coming up that we're doing maybe one-offs in the community centers and we can be working with you on.
Through the chair, I'll just jump in first, if that's all right. When I first started, and Dan Chapman and I met, one of the things I expressed to him was I do believe in collaborative partnerships, and I do believe in working together to achieve, the grand vision that Council has put forward for 2043. I can tell you on the ground, there is work being done currently right now. So libraries and community centers do actually talk, and they do actually work together on different aspects of, their day-to-day work. Once the strategic plan is done, I certainly intend to roadshow it, if you will, through the city so that the city understands really what the library is trying to do and where it's headed, and strongly believe in any partnership opportunities that may result out of that.
Yeah, and the tie-in as well then to the neighborhood associations who are also doing programming at our community centers and are looking to do those same things as well. Thank you.
Great.
Okay, you're officially off the hook now. Thank you so much for, obviously you can tell this council's very supportive and has always been very supportive of the KPL, and I think we're all, one of the benefits of being on council for a long time is seeing the transition from a place that primarily lent books, you're known for lending books, to becoming the integral part of community building that you become is really inspiring. So suffice to say, I think you have a lot of support around this horseshoe. Thank you so much.
Thanks to council.
Okay, up next, second board, I would like to invite the members from the Centre and the Square.
Good afternoon, Chair Davey, Mr. Mayor, and members of council. 2024 has been an exciting year at the Centre and the Square with the appointment of Eric Lariviere as the Executive Director. His staff and Eric have been working very hard over the last 6 months since April, bringing in new programs and building capacity at the Centre and the Square. And many great things have happened in the last 6 months and are to come. We've created a new program called Kitchener Creates. This program makes the studio theater more cost-effective and accessible to community performing groups. And in the last couple of months since we started this program, we've had tremendous uptake from different community groups. Our staff has met with many groups interested in using this professional space in a cost-effective way coming up in the next year. We've developed more diverse programming to reflect the community, including artists like Canadian Brass, Marisa, a world-renowned Portuguese singer, and performing next year, Zakar Hussain, a famous Indian musician. These new acts, along with our traditional mainstream acts like Blue Rodeo, Classic Albums Live, and Dancing with the Stars, have expanded the diversity of performers to reflect our changing community. We have more school shows. This year, SITS will welcome over 20,000 elementary school students to daytime performances. These shows are class trips for students and a great way to introduce them to SITS, to the magic of performing arts experiences, and to make them lifelong patrons of the arts in Kitchener. In 2024, SITS had 7 high school graduations and expects to do more in 2025. These events introduce a wide variety of community members to the Centre and the Square that have not been to this great theater before. In 2025, we are working on building the Centre in the Square as a destination in the region, building more community engagement, enhancing capacity to have more events, and brand the Centre in the Square as the premier performing arts centre in the region. For 2024, we are anticipating a $350,000 surplus. This surplus will be used for capital expenditures. In 2025, as we grow, expand, and invest in building community engagement, strengthen our position as a leading destination for live experiences, we are expecting to break even. Additionally, in early 2025, we expect to start our new strategic plan process. These changes not only benefit the center and the square, but will have a significant impact to the downtown Kitchener, including restaurants and hotels. Thank you for your continued support of the center and the square and the performing arts in Kitchener. I'll now open it up to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Carly. I'm not seeing any questions. Councillor Chapman, there you go.
Yeah, thank you. My question has to do, the symphony is back.
Yes.
Do you see space at all at the Centre and the Square to collaborate with them again in the future?
Yeah, we would be happy to have the symphony come back to the center and the square. Right now, they're in a process of trying to figure out themselves, and they're doing some smaller performances at different churches and venues in the Kitchener-Waterloo region, for sure. We have reached out to the center, we've reached out to the symphony. We've offered them help, but we're ready and able to help them when they're ready to come back to the center and the square. So we're definitely working with them, and we're there for them when they need us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stretch?
Yes, thank you. Just to carry on with the theme of collaboration, we do have, the Conrad Center and we have the Registry Theatre. How do you work collaboratively with other performing arts?
I'm going to let Eric answer that because that's more of an operational. I'll let you do that one.
Yeah, thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having us through the chair. I just want to start by thanking Council for the support, and I've been here 7 months, and you definitely have a incredible infrastructure asset for performing arts, which we're going to be working hard in continue to strengthen its position as a destination for arts and entertainment, live experiences, and also maybe something that we will see blooming is its, I would say, role as a community hub. At Centre and the Square, we have an amazing assets per se as the infrastructure and the spaces, but also you have incredible expertise that you need to run such an operation and a program, which I think we really want the whole community to benefit from, and also to grow the creative industries together. Talking about together, can answer the question, is we actually have been working very closely with the Culture and Entertainment Department led by Jeremy. And we have developed some great conversations and dialogue that are leading to some partnership with the other venues. So for instance, one of the examples of, and this is kind of in progress, because whether it's with the venues or the cultural organization and the creative industries here, we're just starting to do some great work. But for instance, with the other venues, so we have, since we launched Kitchener Creates, we actually have a lot of interest. We've been meeting with a lot of community groups and artists, promoters, local promoters. And essentially what we do, if they want to come to the space, we evaluate their needs. And their needs might be better suited with the Conrad Center. So we would send them to the Conrad Center. Conrad Center is going to do the same for the artists or the groups that they work with. And it is the same with all the other venues that we have. So all the venues right now really work together to optimize the space and really make sure that our cultural community is getting more capacity.
Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Mayor Verbenovich.
Thanks very much, and Eric and Dan and team, thanks for being here. Eric, thanks for all of your efforts since you joined us earlier this year. And I think we've had an exciting year and an exciting year ahead going forward. Wondering if you can just maybe talk a little bit about two things. One, a little bit of the efforts and focus that you're looking to going forward in terms of engaging with the community and where it makes sense, trying to see more in community engagement with the center and the square, because I think we've always wanted to find that right sweet spot between the the business of the operation, but also recognizing that it's an asset for the community. And secondly, and I guess most specifically, I know there's been talk, in the past, there used to be a summer camp program. We know that there continues to be demand for summer camps. Is this something that we might be looking at returning in the future?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Mayor. So I guess it's easy to answer to those two questions through one answer. I think if you look at the business of the Centennial Square, the way we framed it for the time being and leading into our strategic plan process is we've kind of developed 4 kind of pillars, strategic pillars. One is called destination. Number 2 is community engagement. Number 3, capacity building. And number 4, branding. So when you look at the destination point strategy, we look at really strengthening not only our commercial business, but also expanding the scope of our programs, which what is going to do? Well, number 1, we're going to be reaching out. As you know, the growth is fueled through immigration. So we've identified some of the key groups, and also we want to make sure also we serve as many of the constituents, not only in Kitchener, but as you know, our reach is above and beyond the city. It goes in the region and beyond. But definitely that area, when you see artists like Maritza, when you see Zakir Hussain, Forever Tango, these are really part of the strategy to reach out to a new audience that might have not come to the center. So that's part of the strategy. And also through the genres, for instance, we're bringing 2 great jazz artists this year, and it's working really, really well. So again, it's not only about the diversity, but also to broaden the scope of the market out there. When you've been a roadhouse, which basically what this center has been for the past 10 years at least, you really limit yourself to rock and roll, comedy, variety, and pop artists, right? So this connects with a certain target market, but I don't think it connects with everything that a great community could have access to. So that's part of it. The other target that I'm really feel very strongly with is families. If you're going to serve your community, your market, I think you want to go at the base and develop a strategy to really make it really family friendly. And that starts with programming, and it starts with community engagement education program. We just issue a press release about Kids Are Back, meaning, we showcase that our school programs are back with from 1 or 2 programs last year to 5 programs that will actually attract over 20,000. And we're just getting started. So I think that's an example as far as the major stage program. We really have to find the right product that costs the right price to make sure that it's going to be accessible for the families, and you can come and see a great show at the Centennial Square without having to pay $100 tickets. So it's always a challenge because we have 2,000 seats to fill, and a lot of those productions that are coming are paid in American dollars, as you all know. That 41 cents right now is going to hurt us for the rest of the year. So. However, strategically, I think it's something important, and we really need to build more capacity to be able to do that. As far as the camps, Mr. Mayor, I'm already on that project. We've hired someone to develop a business plan to develop a summer camps for 2025, which we hope will be ready to launch. So I already have actually a tentative budget, and we're working in finalizing the business plan. And in that regard, we're very happy that the city has accepted to work with us in being able to use your network of families to promote that camp when they're going to open in March.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Up next is Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair Davy, and thank you so much for coming in. I think it's great to hear your ideas around different ways of using the center and the square and introducing it to new people. I think that that's your most important way of being able to grow it in the future. One group that I haven't necessarily heard you talk about would be our post-secondary institutions. I know with them, sometimes space truly is the final frontier in those places that space is at a detriment, whereas Center in the Square might have openings during the day for different types of things. Is that something that you're actively working on as well?
You mean the high schools?
No, the post-secondary.
The universities.
So, yes.
Yeah. So
And
we're
college.
reaching out to those constituents as well. Definitely, well, if it's true, the fact that we've made space for graduations, I think, is a first step. That we have made, May, June commitment to reserve most of the dates for those graduations. As far as reaching out to the universities, we're going to be having to figure that out, how we can work with them. But if you look at the market of students that we want to serve, I think that's part of the let's say, youth strategy that I talked about. It's yes, young families, but also there are some products out there that we're actually already working into bringing to the Center in the Square that will connect very, very well with the students. So I don't know if that's the angle that you're looking for. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, the studio is open. When we talk about Kitchener Creates, we're happy to work with them in any shape and form they feel that they would need.
Yeah, not necessarily was what I was talking about, because those are one-offs. A graduation, we all want our kids to graduate as many times as possible, but what is that, 3-4 times in a life? I'm talking about maybe more regular things that you can have more of a revenue stream that's generated through that. Maybe it's a fine arts class from one of the schools. Maybe it's something, maybe there's some different ways of looking at things. I often look at Center in the Square kind of like maybe the way that we used to look at churches, that it's something that was, you go to on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, and a Sunday afternoon. But how do you fill it all the time so that you're then having that constant revenue stream? And I think that is what you're saying, but maybe there's some different ways of looking at that as well.
Absolutely. And through Kitchener Creates, I think we will do that. It's a matter of making sure that we evaluate, assess all the needs. We're also going to take leadership on that. We need more capacity. This is the kind of thing that needs investments. Most of those activities, and let's say we're going to have a residency of an artist that will benefit some of the schools here, the universities. It is not a money-making proposition. However, it's a great proposition to actually connect with the community. So this is all part of this program that we call, that project that we call Kitchener Creates. We're just getting started. There's a lot of work to do. Still a lot of the community to meet with. And needless to say, universities, colleges here cannot be ignored. They're part of what this area is all about. And we certainly hope to find a way that we're going to be a great value for them. And I know that we're going to be also proactive in how we're going to be programming and reaching out to them. And it's just a matter of time that you will see actually, hopefully, whether it's a master class, whether it's a residency. And again, we need to better understand what their needs are.
Good, thank you.
And it can be also other areas of the universities. It might be with other departments that there might be needs that we'll be happy to discuss.
Thank you. Up next is Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Chair Davy, and thank you for coming in today and presenting to us. And so, at any event, user experience is always very important, at least to me, and I think most goers of whether it's a concert or show, whether it's seating comfort, it's vantage point from your seats, accessibility, ease of access of getting in and getting out, but also important is food and beverage.
Yep.
And so, are there any plans to improve? And I mentioned this last year. the options that people have access to during the shows of either food and or craft beer.
Yeah. So I think this is an area that we always strive for improvement. One of the key areas where we can keep finding ways to improve is the ease of service and the how fast we can serve people, because it's really a big element of it. When we have crowds that are major spenders in F&B, this is probably the areas that is most important. And you know, we talk about classical music, for instance. Unfortunately, the orchestra is not there, and we certainly have reached out to them to see how we can partner in the future. That's going to be a win-win situation. But you know, it's always been said that classical music audience don't drink. But let's say that you would do a special night with specialty drinks. I know, you know, it's different than draft beer, but that's a kind of improvement that we can make in the future as we expand the program, and hopefully those genres of performing art experiences will be back at the center. So I think it's something that is always top of mind. Our director of guest experience always tried to find new products that will sell better. I would say that the more you also improve the ease of service, the more money you're going to make. I would say that we do really well on that end, to be honest with you, and again, always an element of improvement. Our membership also will be something that we look at, because people that go in the lounge, they do spend usually more money than those that are in the lobbies. So definitely that marginal revenue and the fact that we could have our lounge full for every performance is part of our marketing plan.
And so, yeah, and that was another question that I'll get to. I guess, you know, more and more younger people are indulging in different kinds of drinks, and there's more of an emphasis on local. And so I would like to see the Center in the Square put a little bit more emphasis on local, because I think, you know, whether it's a special night for people watching the symphony, the fact is, you know, if you want younger people to engage and to come out to shows, other than the music, there has to be other options that makes their, like I said, their user experience even more enjoyable. But my next question is a center stage membership. So is there any opportunity to create such a space for the general public, or even to open that up to the general public without a membership on specific you know, obviously symphony, it's a different genre of people that go to the symphony versus maybe who goes to Blue Rodeo or who's in town a couple weeks ago, Blippi. And so, like, is there any, Blippi was here, yeah. Is there any opportunity to open open that area, not just to memberships, when you know it's not going to be a full capacity crowd and you don't have a lot of people using that space?
100%. We are actually already on that. What I can say is that you always have access to the membership. I think it costs $20 if there's room. Anyone can come if there's room that night. Also, we're very, very happy to bring to our leadership team, Jonathan Randall, who's been one of the key members of the Drayton team, which is, you know, a great brand in this region. And he's started today as our Director of Marketing and Development, evidently to do all that, you need capacity. And right now, you know, we're rebuilding our own marketing team. So definitely that there will be a plan to increase revenues for that marginal operation, but very important one. Here's what's going to happen is that we're going to eventually not have enough room. So this is something we're going to need to address, because a lot of shows are sold out at the lounge, and those that are not sold out, it's just a matter of doing the right marketing to attract more people and get them become a member. Because once people have experienced it, usually, it's like you experience it, you know who came. Should we give him a call? Should we send there an email? This is a whole marketing process that will happen.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Ioannidis?
Thank you, Chair Davey, and thank you, Eric, for coming in. I just have more or less comments with regards to some of the questions that Mayor Urbaniak, actually, I think you're doing, or I think the team at Senator Square is already doing a phenomenal job with the community. I think it's an understatement bringing in the one back room online that in my time, in the last 14, 15 years, was unusable for the community, and I think that's a really, really big win. Also, in addition, I don't think we toot our horn that much when it comes to with regards to the space being available to all the dance groups that have come through, and as well as all the graduation spaces. I mean, graduations that are being held at the Center Square. So I really believe we really are doing a really great job at the organization when it comes to community space. So I think you're not giving yourself enough credit and the team enough credit.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
Thank you. Up next is Councillor Singh.
Yeah, sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think similar to Councillor Ioannidis, Eric, I wanted to make sure that I specify the same comments about under your just even short leadership, just the general direction that the center is leading towards. I think we've always continued to ask for some sense of sustainability of the overall operations at the center, and looking at the surplus in the past and continuing forward as well is speaking to that very point that, obviously complete non-reliance on city funding is never going to be possible, I think. But to get to a point where there is general net revenues that can go towards significant capital deficits that are in place that mitigates some of that concern I think is definitely in the movement in the right direction. Additionally to Councillor Deneau's comments, it's something I've continually asked for myself in the past. There has to be something more beyond just the performances. In many cases I've seen during my time on the center itself, the performances, tend to be, in some cases, to break even. It's really the reliance, and that many other operations are very much the same. To get the people in is the attraction of the performance. To get the people's revenue up is through the ancillary services, and that's the premium lounge access, that's the food and beverages that's being offered, it's the overall outside experience that's being enhanced beyond the performance itself. I think there is still, I heard from you, Eric, that this is always the endeavor to improve on, but I think what you have to hear from members of council, we have heard this for many, many, many years past. That is not your fault, but we have heard that. But I think what we're asking for is more quicker movement on that, and I think under your leadership, that is possible. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councillor Singh. We're going to do our best. I think there's some potential there. I've not had the time to evaluate exactly what the growth can be at that level, but certainly that we can, I think my principle in business is that you always have to grow, and I think that's an area that we need to grow as other areas that are critically important to build our capacity to really not only continue to create this very robust destination for the region, but also to be that community hub that this community deserves.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, my question is for staff. Do you want me to bring it forward later? Or?
Yeah, go ahead. Actually, just hang on for 1 second.
Okay.
I'll just thank you guys kindly for the presentation. Appreciate it. There are no other questions in the queue. I also want to acknowledge Sylvia Cook, the Director of Finance, who's done a great job in making our finances legible and understandable and projections. Just appreciate the work. But yeah, you guys can take a seat, and then we'll do questions of staff and any comments that we're going to make, okay?
Thank you very much.
Councillor Chapman, when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. So I was just looking at the 2024 budget for the Center in the Square and what's before us today in this budget. And I just wondered if you could explain the discrepancies. So in 2024, under budget 2024, it said $2,154,217. And in this year's budget, that same line is $6,467,000. And the bottom lines, I mean, we can just look at the bottom lines. Total revenue, according to the 2024 budget, was $4,571,000 versus $9,377,000. So, I mean, there are quite substantial differences, and I just wondered if you could explain what I'm looking at here.
That actually may be a question for the delegates. Mr. Haggie?
Yeah, I was going to say, the budgets that are included here come from Center in the Square, so it is a question for them.
Okay, sorry.
The question is what page you're looking at. Actually, it's at the back of the, well, I guess it's page Appendix B34 should be next in your package.
Well,
Yeah. So, yeah, yeah.
Should I go ahead, or?
We've kind of, under Eric's leadership, we've adjusted the way we present the financial statements. So we've gone from a net amount to a gross amount, so it better reflects what is happening at the Center in the Square. So, do you want to add to that? That's generally what specific line were you thinking?
Okay, so
Councillor?
I'll just look at total. So when we look at total revenue, according to your budget right now, you're saying $9,377,000.
Correct.
Plus change.
Right.
If I look at what was the Center in the Square budget in 2024, when we looked at this last year, it was $4,571,000 and a bit. So I mean that's more than double.
Just to
right?
clarify, Councillor
No,
Chapman,
I don't have that number in front of me, so.
Are you looking at the slide on the back of, like in?
Okay, can I let you, do you want to have a look at this?
Sure. Sorry, I don't see the, yeah.
What I'm looking at is if you're doing total revenue, I have 9.3 million for
Right.
2024, and the budget for 2025 is 11.3. Is that the question?
Okay.
Okay, I went back to the budget that we discussed last year.
This is last year's budget, right?
And the numbers, like usually they carry over, right? So the 2024 would carry over to this year's budget, and we would see what it was and what was projected, as we have here. But if you look at last year's budget for 2024, the difference is double.
Yeah.
For what was being budgeted in 2024, both in revenue and in expenses. So I'm just trying to understand why this discrepancy.
Yeah, so what we've done is we've changed the presentation. So last year, this was the original budget. This was the budget. It was presented last November 2023. We calculated using net amount. So we took the cost of a show minus the revenue of a show minus the cost of the show to give you the net amount for the show. Under Eric's leadership, for better presentation and transparency, we've switched our budgeting. So now we have, as an example, $6 million in gross revenue, 6.4 or 8.1 million for the 2025 budget in gross revenue, and then I can't see the other part of the slide, but what the first line under expenses is performances. So the difference between those two lines is what it costs us, the contribution margin to put on the performance. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, maybe this slide that I'm looking at can be shared with the rest of council.
Yeah. That's the other thing. KWS we had KWS in our budget for 2024, and it's been removed.
Right.
For 2025.
Mr. Hagg, you want to help us here?
Sure. Just wanted to point out, so yes, so now it's showing all gross revenues up in the revenue part, all the gross expenses in the expense part. So when you look at last year's 24 budget versus what's showing on the screen here, the gross dollars are a lot bigger. The bottom line is still exactly the same. So it's $153,000. It's just in last year's presentation, the net performance revenue was about $2 million, but all of those other expenses were much, much lower as well. So you get to the same bottom line, but it's, do you take all the revenues, net out a bunch of the expenses, or do you show everything? And what Center in the Square has done for this year is moved to showing all the expenses in expense lines, all of the revenues in revenue lines, instead of netting things out.
So I think the goal here, if I may, to the chair, answer that question as well. So again, what we've changed is to give you and give us a better picture of how the business evolves and the costs and the revenue streams. So for instance, it shows that we generate 80% of our income through earned income. It shows that the city provides 20% of our income, and it also shows that our performances revenues are at 8.1 million. That's the gross. So that's your gross ticket, net ticket sales, so without the fees. And then you have all the other revenues. And then with the performance expense, that I don't see the number there, but that's a number that is all the expenses. In the past, you would see 8 million minus whatever that amount is, and that's what was shown. And that did not give you this full scale and really the full, I would say, scope of the business, and also like this shows much better the area where we need to make major improvements. But for example, on the contributed income line item, where I think there's a huge potential to bring more sponsors, more partners, and that's one of the line items that we're going to be also working on other than the other revenues. So I think that's, from our perspective, a much better way to bring this to, certainly for our perspective and management and planning, and we hope that for also council, it gives you a better idea of the bigger picture.
So
does that make sense,
yeah,
Councillor?
no, and I appreciate the explanation, but when I saw
it's a great
it, I thought-
question, actually,
Yeah.
because that's a big change.
Yeah, it is. And so can we expect in the future, then we'll be looking at gross figures rather than net?
100%.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Can I have my sheet back?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for that.
Okay, yeah, there is no one else in the queue. Thank you all for your presentation. I just echo some of the comments as well that I've heard. We're all looking for, definitely for some more diversity of programming, but we also want to make sure that we see that theater as full as possible going forward. So there are no other questions. We are on to the strategic discussion. Mr. Haggie.
Sure. Oh. Can I get control? There we go. Perfect. So before we talk about the operating budget first, there we go. It's an exciting part of this year's budget. There's $1 million available for council's discussion here today and potential direction. Staff have provided some ideas, high level, as to where it could go, namely towards facilities, recreation, or achieving more climate action plan items. There's no specific recommendations as part of this year's budget presentation, but as noted on the slide, there's more information about all of those in Appendix G in our binders. So the strategic additions, that areas that we may want to look at are the first issue paper. The second issue paper details some of the information that's already included in the budget, the $75 million that Mr. Lautenbach already referred to. It's worth, we believe it's worth starting the discussion about these items here today. We're going to circle back to them next week as part of our capital budget presentation, so we're not looking for any kind of resolution to it today, but it's just kick off the conversation about it. We'll come back to it next week, and then ultimately the mayor will take in the discussion that he's heard from council, the priority areas of various councillors, and consider that when proposing the budget on December 2nd. So we'll pause here if there's discussion about strategic additions.
Certainly. So at committee's discretion, if there's any of you would like to discuss anything to do with the strategic addition now, you may. Of course, as Mr. Haggie highlighted, we will have another chance to speak to it at Capital. I have Councillor Ioannidis.
Just out of curiosity, with the one-time funding available for Capital, the options that were provided in the issue paper, just wondering if there's other items that could be included in that.
I can actually answer that one, yes. So that million is totally at, staff's given what they would otherwise recommend, but it's at council's purview how to best utilize those funds.
Okay, because I'm asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend, okay. I do not see anyone else in the queue. I think my watch told me I have to stand up, so I think might be, actually, Councillor Chapman on this?
I just have a question about the $1 million. If we weren't to spend it, what would that do to the bottom line? Like the tax increase?
Oh, your microphone isn't on, but.
Since it's one-time funding, the funding would go back to reserve. It would not be used to reduce the tax rate increase. It would go to the tax capital reserve, which is where it's coming from, and wait there for future direction.
And are we able to designate it to a particular reserve? I mean, I don't want to get into a discussion about it right now, but is that an option with this money?
There could be, as long as the funding aligns with the use of that reserve.
Right, okay, thank you.
Okay, there are no other questions. Let's take I'm going to say 3 minutes, hoping it's a 5-minute stretch break, and then we'll reconvene, okay? Okay, everyone, let's reconvene. Mr. Haggie, you're going to take us through the next bit.
Sure. So we'll deal with the tax-supported operating budget. I'll present, there's a few slides, we'll just do them as a bundle, and then if there are questions about that, we can pause and take questions at that point in time. The proposed tax rate increase is 3.9%. And this graphic on screen kind of shows what makes that up. We've got expenses on the left-hand side in the green bars, $15.7 million and then $4 million being added to this year's budget. And then there are some revenues that are able to offset those, $10.8 million in just revenue generation as well as some assessment growth. What is left is what we have to levy in taxes, and that equates to a 3.9% tax rate increase in 2025. This slide shows the major cost increases broken down to core services or delivering city services, the nomenclature we've been using, about 3.1%. There's an upward pressure on the tax rate related to just continue to deliver those services that we're already doing. Then through advancing strategic priorities and growth items, that's adding another 2.5% increase to the tax rate, but we do have assessment growth that offsets that by 1.75% for a total of tax rate increase of 3.9%. As we're only talking about the city's portion of the tax bill here today, but as you probably know, we collect taxes for all areas, the region, the education, as well as the city. And this graphic just shows how much of it proportionally is city versus those other sources. The regional taxes now make up about 58% of the local tax bill, so changes on their budget have a much more significant impact than the tax rate increase that will be passed by the city. We've mentioned other funding sources. One of those is user fees, which is included. There's a whole appendix to it, Appendix E. And so as part of the budget process, we'll be passing updated user fee rates that will come into effect on January 1st. Generally, user fees are increasing by 4%, which is in line with the proposed tax rate increase. And the complete user fee schedule, as I mentioned, can be found in Appendix E. There's also an issue paper in Appendix G that outlines the exceptions to the 4% increase. And then finally in this section, there's another issue paper just to draw council's attention dealing with the new staff resources required to continue delivering service. That's found in Appendix G. I just want to note there's one typo in it. It talks about in processing payments in a timely manner, it talks about 1 half-time FTE. That should actually be 2 half-time FTEs, so it's the equivalent of 1. So we'll make sure that's reflected in what goes as part of the final budget day package as far as the budget resolution, but I just wanted to point it out to council at this point in time. So if there are questions on the tax-supported budget, we can talk about those now.
Okay, just before I go to the queue, just to clarify then, so that would bring us to 18 instead of 17.5, right?
Correct.
FTs, okay, thank you. And, okay, a few people in the queue. First up is Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Councillor Davey, and I'm going to steal Councillor Johnson's question. I know exactly what she was going to ask. So as far as total property taxes, and I mentioned this last year, and I'm pretty sure my first year we mentioned this. How do we let the public know that our portion of the taxes that they see increased is only 30% of what we charge versus the region and versus the school boards, because we hear it. I'm sure, the school trustees don't hear, I know the school trustees don't hear about the increase, and I'm pretty sure the regional councilors don't hear about the increases we do. So how do we get that information out there?
So we try to get the good word out through our budget process as much as we can. One of the reasons we have this graphic is for that. The tax bill, I believe itself, actually has it broken out by area. And so people can see how much they're paying. But yes, because they're paying the bill to the City of Kitchener, it's you as council and the staff that are in the finance department that bear the brunt of that messaging over and over and over again.
So when they do receive that, the tax assessment, like, can that be like highlighted in bright yellow, just so it brings it to people's attention? Because I think we all know that most people don't read that. They just look at how much they're paying extra, and it's, I'm happy or I'm not happy, usually not happy.
Yes.
And so, again, then we get the calls. But if we could highlight that, because I can't tell you how many times I've, answered these questions. It's not like, we're only 30% of the budget. We're a small part of it. So if we could somehow just like really highlight that fact that this is the breakdown of the budgets, I think that would be really beneficial to us in explaining how the process works.
Sure. I believe Mr. Lautenbach has a response as well.
Apologies, Mr. Lautenbach. Go ahead.
So through the chair, certainly, as Mr. Hagee indicated, through the budget process, it's part of our messaging in terms of trying to provide that education in terms of what the breakout is. We do have an insert that we have put in with the tax bill for the last 2 years, particularly because we have seen that percentage shift where we are a lower part of the overall tax bill and the region portion has been growing. So we do highlight that as part of that insert. It does go out to both through mail for those that receive their bill that way. It also goes to those that receive e-billing as well. And we'll continue with that practice for 2025.
No, I know you will. I just think it needs to be like bold and bright, just to bring it to their attention. Thanks, Mr. Hagee.
We will invest in neon signs.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson.
Yes, thank you, Chair Davey. And I did not have a patent on that question, but that's exactly where I was going to go as well. So most people don't ever get anything paper, I'm going to assume. I know I don't. I just see, an item come out of my bank account every month that says City of Kitchener on the first of the month, and I'm assuming that probably most people do that. Can we change that wording, or does it have to say City of Kitchener because we're the ones that are debiting the account?
I believe it shows as a payment to us, because it is a payment to us. We're collecting on behalf of others, so I'm not certain that we'd be able to change it.
Since we are collecting on behalf of others.
Mr. Lautenbach, do you want to add?
Sorry.
Yes, so Mr. Hagee is correct. So through the chair, because we do collect, and it's our role to collect taxes on behalf of other bodies, it is the City of Kitchener that's collecting that, and that's what would be part of seen as a withdrawal from their account in terms of that explanation.
Yeah, that's what I thought, that it probably, for your bank, it has to say City of Kitchener, but I'm wondering if it could say regional taxes. Just throwing that out there, because that is actually the true nature of what is coming out on the first of every month. Is that something that we can look into? Because it would be a lot fairer and more reasonable for the taxpayer to know exactly what that debit is.
Mr. Lautenbach.
I didn't hear what you said.
So through the chair, we are responsible as the lower tier to collect property taxes also on behalf of the region. It is outlined in the bill, and so there wouldn't be a way for us to identify that they're providing funding to the region. They are providing funding to the City of Kitchener. We're providing that then to the region in terms of their portion. So, we can continue to do the efforts that we have done, which is that bill insert, trying to get that message out in terms of what that breakdown is. But in terms of those withdrawals, it would be money that's coming to Kitchener, and so we wouldn't be able to change that.
I'd like to say so you're saying there's a chance, but thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Chair Davey. I'm going to piggyback on what Councillor Deneau, what Councillor Johnson is, and I know what another member is going to bring up. We need to get this right, and we need to get this figured out. Having a line or whatever is not good enough. We hear this on a regular basis. I know if we factor in what the regions have increased in the last 3 years, it's over 20%, and I'm sick and tired of getting their bullets, taking their bullets for their tax increases. We need to figure this out, and we've been asking for this for many, many years.
Thank you. I sense frustration. Again, if we could try and, I actually wrote down some notes here in terms of my own personal regional impact, which I'll share in a minute, but directing questions at staff would be ideal, but I think the sentiment's been passed along. If there's anything that comes up between now and final budget day or in the future and how we can better delineate this, I think that's valuable. And I guess just by reference of my own home, which anyone can look up online, our tax calculator, assuming that we approve our current tax proposal at 3.9%, for my house, my taxes are going up about $58 for the year. And the region right now is in a range of 227 to 341, depending on where they land. So we will hear that. Next in the queue is Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. I just wondered where the 4% increase for the user fees comes from. Like, why are we not tying it to the CPI rates?
So through the chair, the last number of years, we sort of had discussion with council previously, and generally our user fee increase has been in the ballpark of our proposed tax rate increase.
Okay, so it's not that it's being 4.0, it's that it's within the range of our tax increase. Is that what you're saying?
Right. So instead of, we don't tie it to CPI, we don't have any direction from council along those lines. There were previous discussions with council of having the user fee rate increase being similar, usually to a round number. So we typically have not done like a 3.27% increase or whatever, but kind of the nearest quarter or half of a percent in the same ballpark as the tax rate increase.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
And I'd just add, there have been, I think, at least 2 years where we did freeze them as well, because we wanted to keep them a bit lower. Up next is Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. I'm piggybacking on this side of the horseshoe. This is something we talk about every year. I'm wondering if there is a way to do more of a communications plan as far as executing the tax when tax time comes, and break it down, like go to social media, do some advertising that really breaks it down in a very simple way for people that they can see it, like all the breakdowns. We haven't done that. I know you do a great job of sending mailers out and sending notes, but to most of the points here, nobody really reads them. So I'm wondering if we could change the strategy to get the communication out of who's paying and what exactly people are paying for.
Sure. Yeah, we can take that direction. We do have one of our budget videos that, again, people would have to click on and see. It does do a bit of an explainer. It's a short one, so it's less than a minute or so. But again, it takes the active effort of somebody to click on it as opposed to getting it jammed in their face at a Facebook ad or a YouTube clip or something along those lines.
Thank you. Up next is Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Chair Davey. Last question. Remind me, and anybody who's watching, how do we assess people's properties? Is it our own assessment or is it MPAC?
So through the chair, we do not assess any property. It is completely MPAC's responsibility to assess people's property values, and then we apply a tax rate to it, and that determines what people's tax bill is.
Okay, thank you. That's good to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And, you've already specified it'd be helpful for us to outline questions of our finance team, but I think it's important. It's not really a question. It is feedback. And I can recall over at least 10 years being the constant voice, perhaps along with yourself and a few other members, just specifying the very same, that we need to communicate better about how the taxes are collected and who the taxes go to. And this is not really a fault, Mr. Chair, of our staff. I think they are limited with means that they can communicate. But I think what my colleagues are saying is that the current methods is not necessarily resonating in an effective way for our community, even though we have the inserts. When the tax bill comes out, we are the front line in getting those inquiries of what is with certain explicit words, is the city doing with their taxes. And I think that is incumbent on us to improve that communication. So I'll ask you, Mr. Hagee, rather than just going through the pretense of us as a council of asking the question and then our staff answering and saying, hey, we're trying to do better, what more definitive action can we take outside of the insert can we change the communication on the bill itself? Can we change the language, the way it's segregated? Perhaps Councillor Deneau's point was correct. It's highlighted effectively differently, where it shows the city's portion and the region's portion separately, and the incremental tax increase as well. Not just what the intake is, what for that year, what the increase has been for the city of Kitchener and the region itself. And that may come with a cost, Mr. Hagee, I get that. And that may be something perhaps you can illuminate on, that we have to change on SAP or just the way we manage our billing. And if that's the case, can that be something that staff can communicate as part of 2025 budget, where we can look at changing our process?
Mr. Lautenbach can take this one.
So through the chair, in terms of the bill format and how we show sort of the city property taxes, the region, the education portion, that is standard in terms of how it's supposed to be presented. Maybe what we can do is take away and take a look at the insert that we do provide to see if there's any additional information that we could add to that. As I said, the tax breakdown is shown there. We do have information about our budget that's included with that insert. Hearing the comments, we'll take that away as we prepare for the insert for next year to see what we might be able to propose, to potentially look at other ways where we can continue to communicate this information. The one thing I do want to say as well, though, is that we do have social media that we do provide related to the tax breakdown. So there are other methods other than just the bill insert that we have been making to try to communicate this message, provide that understanding that, the city portion is 30% of the tax bill. The other 70% is other organizations, education, and the region that make up that percentage split.
Mr. Chair, if you might allow, I just want to kind of quickly respond to staff's response. Again, I start out with saying I don't see necessarily a fault of our staff in their lack of choice of trying to communicate. I think it's recognition that the way that we're doing isn't necessarily resonating. So I'll speak to the social media. I have no concern with it. I think we're doing a phenomenal job online communicating with a video. It's very clear, outlines exactly who's taking what and who's responsible for what. But the challenge ends up being that there are many inner city for whom, like Mr. Chair, that you specified on your tax bill alone, the region portion is going to be $200 plus difference. There are many in the community, for them, that's going to be a detrimental increase. And those are the very same individuals, seniors, or those that are so effectively trying to just get by working that they're not actively online. They're not as well connected technology-wise. So I think we do have to look at additional ways. And what I'm hoping, Mr. Hagee, I'll end with this, is perhaps not just a takeaway, but this is something that our staff can communicate as final budget day of how we're going to communicate outside of social media to recognize what those differences are between the city and the region intake. Thank you.
Maybe on the bill, for every percentage point above inflation, we bump the font by 1 point. I'm kidding. Mayor Verbenovich. Oh, sorry, Mr. May, did you want to? Oh, 1 second here. I'm going to take out Mayor Verbenovich. Can you re-queue Mayor Verbenovich? Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My microphone's not working, so I'll use Michael's. Certainly, we've heard council's feedback on this point in previous years. As Mr. Lautenbach indicated, the creation of the insert 2 years ago was a direct response to council's feedback. But we appreciate the feedback that you're saying that may not be landing with folks or resonating well. I'm interested in getting this right and meeting your expectation, and so I'd suggest that this is a dialogue that we continue on over the course of our budget meetings between now and end of December. What I would offer for the next meeting in a week's time at Capitol is that we come back and try and relay back to you what we think are the objectives that you're trying to achieve. Because if we don't understand that, then we'll miss the mark in terms of tactics. And so we'll come back with some content next week in the presentation to say, here are the communications objectives that we think we've heard you articulate. If we agree on those, then we can go away and talk about tactics before final budget day. So we're happy to take that away and bring it back.
Appreciate that, Mr. Chapman. Thank you. Sir, Mayor Verbenovich, you're next.
Yeah, thanks very much. And I'm pleased that we're having this dialogue, because I think it is important that residents fully understand, how their tax dollars are playing out between the region ourselves and the provincial government. And I think as most people are aware, if you've been following along with the regional budget, I've certainly been expressing some significant concerns about the increase that's in front of us there, and will continue to do so as we work through the budget. And as I've said there, and I'll say here, it may unfortunately be the second time in my years as an elected official where I may not be able to support the final regional budget, depending on where it ends up. Having said that, I do just want to. I feel I do need to stick up for the region a little bit here as the only voice that sits on regional council, and just remind colleagues that they are responsible for a different basket of goods, and while I think there's a lot more that needs to be done at the region in terms of getting that budget under control, there are also a basket of goods that is very different and that's providing some significant challenges in our community right now, including issues around housing and so on. And so particularly in terms of the shelter system, affordable housing and so on. And so I just want to remind colleagues to reflect on that as we consider our position on this. Thank you.
Thank you. We have some folks in the queue for a second time. That's okay. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, I just wondered, somebody mentioned MPAC and that they set the property tax or the property values. I know they put a freeze on any adjustments over I think the past 2 years, or maybe since COVID. I forget how long it's been. Oh, it's been 10 years? So do we anticipate, really, I didn't know it was that long. Are we anticipating that to change over the course of the next year?
Through the chair, or I believe the last we heard was no.
No?
Mr. Lutlock?
So through the chair, it has been frozen at 2016 values since I believe 2019 when reassessment was supposed to happen for 2020. The province continues to indicate that they're every year that comes by, it's frozen again at those levels. So we have no indication of when that will get back on track in terms of a reassessment. What MPAC is doing is, as new properties are sold, they are adjusting their assessed values to be reflective of older values, and so there is a comparison that's happening there to make sure that it's as fair as it can be within that current system. But we are still waiting for the province to indicate when that next reassessment will take place.
Okay, thank you.
Just to add to, I do recall the province, the representatives actually mentioning it recently, so I think it is on their radar. But again, as to when they actually do something is anyone's guess at this point. Next is Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. I just want to comment on Mayor Barry Vrbanovic's comments with regards to the region. I understand that, they're a larger body and they do have bigger hurdles to get over, that's for certain. But my point when I said earlier is it's the communication breakdown, that people just don't understand who's paying for what. And I think that that would help the region, it would help Kitchener, it would help any other city that's going through this, because I'm pretty sure that we're not the only ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, where are we? Councillor Ioannidis?
Thank you, Chair Davey, and get ready for more comments from me, Mr. Mayor, because there's quite a few grievances that I feel there's being neglected by the region.
Councillor Deneau?
Yeah, hi, it's me again.
Hi.
That's Taylor Swift, if anybody doesn't know that.
We had Jim Carrey earlier.
So I'm going to try to ask this question in a way I think my brain understands it. And if anybody doesn't understand it, but you know what I'm getting at, you can help me out. So of the 100% of taxes that we collect, 60% goes to the region. We're 30% of that allotment. What does the region provide of that 60% that would deal with the city of Kitchener? We look after trails, we look after parks, we look after rec centers, like a whole whack of stuff in that 30%. And so they're double of what we collect. And so what are they responsible for? We know policing is a big one, but how much of the impact does it have on the city of Kitchener? Does that make sense, anybody? Okay. well, okay, put it that. It's not,
I'm not sure, is the question the region's responsibilities in general?
well, yeah, like, so, we make up 100, our taxes, 30% of our taxes make up 100% of everything we have in the city, where 60% of that obviously doesn't contribute to 100% of the city. So I'm just curious if we know any calculations.
So
I believe this is, Mr. Hay, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. So through the chair, it's all the tax-supported services they provide. So police has already been mentioned, ambulance, waste management, public transit. They do have their own road network, so whether it's them doing the work on it or we do work on their behalf sometimes, they're paying for that, grass cutting and the like on their roads. We may do that work, but they're still paying for it. In the budget binder, there's a summary of some of the regional services that are provided. Okay. It's not fully extensive, but it's essentially, they do the same kind of exercise we do. We add up all of the money we need, divided by the property values, and that figures out, all the expenses we have minus all of the revenues we're bringing in, this is the taxes we need. They do the same exercise. Their services or basket of goods is a language that's already been used this morning, is different than ours. And so they're just doing the exact same thing. Oh,
okay.
Social services is another gigantic one that I didn't mention.
So I guess would it be safe, in your opinion, would it be safe to say that our taxes resonate, the services that we provide resonate more with the city than some of the services that they provide at 60, like?
Through the chair, I would say it's totally dependent on your personal circumstance. Thankfully, I haven't needed the ambulance service any time in my life. If I did, I want them to show up.
Right.
I've used public transit. Some people don't. So people value services differently.
Okay, thank you. I promise that's the last one.
Okay, the only one left in the queue is Councillor Singh. We are veering a bit off of budget track, but Councillor Singh is going to bring us back, right? Go ahead, Councillor Singh. Councillor Singh?
I'm sorry, looking at the budget and the proposed, what I said was when I was mute, I said, Scott, that's a lot of pressure, but fine, I'll succumb to it. Looking at 3.9, which is higher than the 2-year average at 3.2. What I was going to, I don't know where we're going to land at the end of the day, but I was hoping that for final budget day, for public consumption as well, that we could include a 10-year average of looking at the 2-year average of inflation and where the city budget has lied. So in my mind, I think this is the first time that we will be above the inflationary rate or either the 2-year average. Would it be correct in assuming that, Mr. Hagee?
Pardon?
Mr. Hagee, when you're ready, I would also, Councillor Singh, there's really, if you want like a really good visual representation, page, I guess, Appendix B28 has that. There you go. Just brought up. Look at that. Shows the long-term average. It also shows the City of Kitchener well under. Mr. Hagee, do you want to add?
Yeah.
I was just going to say, this is a 5-year representation of it. We may have had an individual year when we are slightly higher. The overall course has been lower than inflation the entire time I've been at the city, which is 14 years, I think.
No, I saw that, and then I was really looking at the 10-year average. I know going backward, I think we were even better, to be honest. I think we had some challenge during COVID, but beyond that, I think looking at a 10-year horizon, it shows even a better reflective picture of how well the City of Kitchener has performed. And if you might allow, Mr. Chair, I just want to quickly respond to what Mr. Mayor said. And he was very poignant that the region is offering a very different set of goods and services. And I'm sorry. Okay, I have it. Sorry, my daughter's offering that her tooth came out and she's bringing that from school. My apologies. So what I wanted to quickly say was it's really the point that I was trying to make. It's not about bad-mouthing the region of what their budgetary increases are. They have to be responsive and to how they're allocating their budget. It's more so outlining the success and performance of our staff and this council's prudent fiscal approach to setting our budgets, where if looking at other cities that also have very similar goods and services delivery as us, and their rates are coming consecutively a lot higher than what the city of Kitchener is, and that's within the region and beyond. And I think we need to be a lot more, proud and more communicative of that great effort. And I think our residents would feel better that our staff and this council has their interests well in mind. And I think it's more of ensuring that reflective differences, not necessarily bad-mouthing anyone else. Thank you.
Thank you. Last in the queue is Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Councillor Davey, and I'm not 100% sure how to frame this question, but it does build on the question that Councillor Deneau had asked about. What the region handles, what we handle, and at a recent council meeting, we had asked to go back to the region to negotiate about the ASCs, for instance, and how we could look into revenue sharing for that to put into road improvements that would be done in Kitchener. How would something like that, it wouldn't be perhaps this year's budget, perhaps it's next year's. How do those conversations and how would that budget fit in? Or any money that would be made from that?
So through the chair, I'm not aware of the status of any negotiations. If there was funding that was coming to the city, it would be part of a future budget discussion. We're not planning. I guess we don't believe it's prudent to plan to have any of that money as part of this year's budget. If we were to have a benefit from it, that would be a surplus in 2025, and then we could budget for it as part of 2026.
So it'd be a bonus. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Innes, you're queued in again on the, okay, kindly be brief.
Yeah, I guess my question is with regards, so we are looking at the operating budget as a whole, and then the item I wouldn't want to ask for is a little one more step later.
I'll come back to you for, yeah.
Okay, so one of the questions that I see in one of the issue papers, and I know we're looking at HVAC improvements, and I agree with these HVAC improvements. I'm just hoping, is there a little bit of more clarity on whether or not these improvements will enhance, I guess, to fight another pandemic?
Ms. McGoldrick, go ahead.
So through the chair, many of our HVAC systems it relates to the filter quality, and certainly at City Hall, we would meet those requirements. As we look at HVAC improvements, we also look at the air handling exchange, which is also a big part of health and safety measures as well. So yes, that all fits into optimizing HVAC system efficiencies and improvements when we look at replacement. There is an energy efficiency cost the higher you go in terms of filter capacity, which is why we look at the larger picture in terms of air handling and air exchange as well.
Okay, so when we look at the $1 million extra, well, not extra, but if a portion of this to increase the HVAC cost so that we could be more or less working with our sustainable, but also work with the health aspect?
So through the chair, I can certainly get financial information to understand if we were to enhance that further and what those trade-offs are. Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. That concludes all the questions on that. On to enterprises, Mr. Hagee.
So the final section to talk about today is enterprise operating budgets. The enterprises are self-sustaining business lines that the city has. So the city gets revenue from lots of different activities that we do. These ones are different in that they're supposed to completely pay for themselves on the operating side and on the capital side. So building, golf, parking, water, sanitary, stormwater, and natural gas. Each of the enterprises has a slide that looks like this. It shows you where in the budget overview document content can be found about it. There's great information there about what the business line does, some recent successes, some recent challenges, a little verbal as well as a nice picture about each of them. And then also in Appendix B, there's some information about the financial picture of each of the enterprises. I'll go through each of them quickly and just comment a little bit about each one. Again, each one has a graph on the slide that kind of gives it an overall depiction of where things are. So revenues for each of the enterprises are kind of on the top half of the graph, and expenses are on the bottom half of the graph. And there's a line that generally shows if it's, you know, in a deficit situation or a surplus situation as we go through. So buildings showing negative results early in the forecast. As there's been a slowdown in construction. Thankfully, the building enterprise has a healthy reserve. That's one of the things. We have a good reserve policy that council has been very good at following, that we have reserves that help us get through kind of poor situations without the need to increase rates. So that would be a deadly situation right now, is there's a bit of a building slowdown, and if we had to increase building permit rates, that would be a bad combination. Because we've set aside money ahead of time, we can weather this storm and not increase rates and hopefully get building activity back going.
Just a quick reminder, if anyone's looking for Appendix B, it's at the very beginning of the operating section of the document.
Golf is next, planning for very minor surpluses kind of across the forecast. You can see the green line basically going all the way across, so that means that revenues are planned to be slightly better than expenses in each year. Parking is next, expecting some deficits in the next few years, as indicated by the red line kind of early on, but then returning to a surplus situation later in the forecast. As we've talked about previously through budget discussions and other parking discussions, it's been kind of slow coming back from the pandemic. People's parking habits are different, their work habits are different, and so there's been a change in the parking business. This is a summary slide about the WIP utilities, so that's water, sanitary, and storm, the Water Infrastructure Program utilities. These, the rates that are included in this year's budget totally align with what was approved by council and presented as part of the WIP 2.0 comprehensive review, which took place last year. Should note that that's in spite of regional increases that wasn't known, so additional increase to the rates that wasn't known at the time of passing WIP last year. So we may need to revisit, and there may be an additional increase as part of future budgets. There's one new staff resource that is requested as part of the WIP utilities, and there's an issue paper about it on Oppo 5 and Appendix G. It's just looking at each of the WIP utilities quickly. Water's projecting small deficits generally across the forecast. Again, in part due to the higher than planned water rate increase, the water supply coming from the region that we distribute throughout the city. So there's, in part, that's what is causing some of the deficit planned across the water forecast. Sanitary, same thing. There's some planned deficits or projected deficits. And again, the sanitary rate increase is slightly higher on that side of the business as well. Stormwater is very close to break even. You see it fluttering between being in a surplus or deficit position. In the grand scheme of things, each of these utilities is in fairly decent shape. And then finally, we have natural gas. So gas delivery is the top chart. It's planned to have positive results across the forecast, while gas supply is expected to have some minor deficits in each of the years. That summarizes where the enterprises are at, finishes off the presentation. There may be questions about individual enterprises. I will not try to answer them because that's not my area of expertise.
It would be funny to watch, though.
It would.
Okay. Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Chair Davey. So, you know, looking through these, I believe all of the enterprises are self-sufficient, except parking. That one concerns me. You know, we as a community are putting more of an emphasis on public transit in different ways to get around, and not necessarily relying on cars anymore. You know, we spend hundreds of millions of dollars on the ION. How do we get that actually back to the positive? Anybody want to answer that?
Mr. Reedman.
Through the chair, so there is a longer-term parking strategy, and so part of that is redevelopment of our surface parking lots over time, and that ties to our Make It Kitchener 2.0, which does reduce the overall number of spaces that we need to manage and consolidates them in our garages. We are seeing a return to more profitable numbers in the longer-term forecast. So we do have no minimum parking requirements anymore for development, and so we will likely see some people choose to acquire monthly parking for residential purposes as well, and so that offsets our daytime usage with our nighttime usage. And there's also a review of the parking enterprise that's underway that we'll be reporting back to council next year, just to make sure that, you know, we're tracking in the right direction and making the right investments.
Okay, yeah, that was my next question. When when do we get to the point where we decide there's something else to do, because it's not sustainable running a deficit? And I'm just curious, and I can't remember 2023 or 2022. How long has it been a deficit, the parking enterprise?
So just a quick point of clarification before we go on to, on page B6 earlier on, it's important to note too that the park enterprise does transfer a dividend of 1.4 million to the city. Does that go, Mr. Reedman, you can explain what it goes to.
Through the chair, and so there is a dividend transfer to the city that goes towards the general tax line as well. Yeah, there are also subsidies that offset that dividend, and so we do track the subsidies to make sure that, you know, we're accounting for them correctly. I do want to note that we are paying off a couple of our parking structures in 2030 and 2032 as well, which will reduce the debt financing for those structures.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so just like if you look back to 24, for example, yes, there was a deficit technically of $1 million, but it also gave the rest of the city 1.4. So, and in the fullness of time, that seems to be balancing. And as a matter of fact, they had a better year last year than anticipated, so that's good. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could tell us the difference between a core revenue versus other revenue. I mean, and it's really the biggest that discrepancy, but where it's most visible is in parking as well.
Sure. So core revenues are generally, if you think of that enterprise, what's the main thing that they do? That would show up as a core revenue. So it's different in each enterprise. Parking does something different than water, than building, or what have you. Other revenues are kind of ancillary or miscellaneous revenues. Not exactly side businesses, but not like parking's main thing is selling parking. Some of the other revenues that they may get, I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but it would be something different than just renting a parking space for a period of time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Councillor Singh? Oh, we can't hear you. You might be on mute. And we lost you altogether. Councillor Singh, go ahead. Still can't hear you. Can't hear you, Councillor Singh, no. No. Did you unplug the headphones, people are asking? No? Okay. Okay, try again. No, still can't hear you.
Okay, I'll come back.
Oh, there you are.
Oh,
go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Go ahead.
All right. No, thank you. I don't know what happened there. No, Councillor Deneau asked a good question about parking, about the sustainability, and it becoming more so in the black than showing a general deficit as being projected through page 47, B47 for 2025, 2026, all the way up until 2028. But I think if you do take a look at B6, it does show the fact that from what it was budgeted and what's being projected is almost a 300,000, or a little less than 300,000 positive. And I think the previous year, it was very much the same, looking at the 2023 budget as well. So we continue to budget, presuming lesser revenue that we have been receiving. So question to staff, could there be an opportunity for us to balance that out a little bit? The fact that we have continuously over many years now, perhaps maybe the COVID was a bit of a change, that we have continually performed better than the budget.
Mr. Reedman.
Through the chair, so the pandemic did impact the parking enterprise significantly. We are doing a review overall, and so we would recommend before adjusting the budget that look at the overall review of the parking enterprise that we'll be presenting back to council before budget next year.
So that's something you're saying that would be better handled in 2026 budget.
Correct. We are still in a relatively precarious situation with parking and return to work and other components. And so, we have done a bit better than anticipated this year, but we want to make sure that, we've done a full review of the whole enterprise to make sure that that trend continues or not.
And in that trend and review, will we be forecasting based on our parking requirements in our development applications where we're easing up on those requirements significantly? And there may be more reliance on public parking for some of those developments as opposed to on-site parking provided by the development itself.
Through the chair, and so that is something we'll be monitoring. We do not have any developments that are occupied yet that have significantly reduced parking, and so we don't know what that uptake is yet, and so we would be just using predictions at this point in time until we start getting some actuals.
Mr. Chair, just a quick question to you. I mean, is this an opportunity? I respect the response that Mr. Reedman has given. I'm not saying I don't agree in using that same assessment, but looking at still additional information on what that budget difference would be if we perhaps 100,000, if you budgeted more 100,000 towards return to the city, what that overall impact would be, as shown out on Appendix B. What was it? B47, I think, whichever the parking one, the graph was. Is that something staff could provide towards final budget day?
Yeah,
we can
certainly ask that.
Review that impact, and we can make our quantitative decision at that point as a council.
So I guess, you could certainly ask that, but realistically, you're just adding or reducing $100,000 from the net revenue at the bottom all the way across in the future years, right? So it would put us in deficit position until 2028.
I understand that.
So,
again.
So I guess what I'm saying is I don't really think there's much. If you want to, recommend that or bring it forward prior to final budget day, that's something you can do. I just don't think I'm not sure there's much work for staff to do unless I'm missing something.
Yeah, you're right. On page B57, it's just our presumption would be just 100,000 more so, right? But you're saying you're just automatically adjusting for that line. Okay. All right. Understood. Thank you.
No problem. Last question, just myself and no one else in the queue. Can you just remind me, I think sometimes in budget time, the gas utility, when I see the full picture, I can't quite recall what our dividend policy is in terms of annual growth. Like, do we have a set amount that we increase our dividend from the gas utility to the city annually? It is showing flat in future years. Mr. Lautenbach.
So through the chair, we did used to index our dividend, by about inflation, or 2% every year. In reviewing the dividend and kind of where it's at, the decision was made to flatline it because it had grown to levels that I think are not sustainable in terms of the gas utility itself. So we are projecting, and that was something we highlighted in last budget, that we believe we need to maintain it at the current levels and not look at increasing it further. And so certainly that was information that we provided to council at an earlier date, and we've continued that trend in terms of our rate setting in the budget.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. And if you don't really answer now, that's fine. But can I just ask if that's reflective of the natural gas industry in general, or is that specific to our operations? Sorry, Mr. Chapman.
Thank you through the chair. Yes, what I can advise council or remind council is that, in fact, the city has been contacted by industry and sector leaders who intervene regularly on Union Gas applications, asking questions about the city's dividend policy. And that prompted a review to look to see how we set dividends versus how it's set with Union Gas or Enbridge. And what we identified is that there were some areas where we were out of step. And so part of the way to bring ourselves more into step, even though our dividend is still significantly higher than Enbridge, was to hold the dividend at current levels for the time being.
Okay, understood. I won't press. I understand the OEB is like the sort of Damocles. Is that the reference? Anyway, no one else in the queue, Mr. Haggie, so I think that concludes. Yeah, was there anything else? Is there anything else committee members have missed they wanted to raise now? For operating. Councillor Ioannidis.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Davey. Kind of been mulling this over for some time, and the last little, because of the season, the fall, I'm just wondering, and I know this is under the mayor's jurisdiction with him being in control of the budget now, but I was just wondering if there's a way where we can work out a similar program to the sidewalk removal snow program with leaves for those same residents that are unable to physically can't do it or whatever. I'm just wondering if there's a way, and I can't remember all the details of this whether it's feasible or not, I'm not sure, but I mean, I'm not looking at trying to increase any significant costs at this moment, but just if there's a way to create that program at a very minimal cost, or at least have residents pay a small portion for that service to make it a little more revenue neutral.
So I'm not sure if staff's prepared to respond. I guess the question is kind of like the Snow Angels program. Councillor, I was looking for a Leaf Angels program. Staff want to respond now, or does something come back as an issue paper? Ms. McGoldrick.
So through the chair, it'd be good to have some additional information in terms of the scope of what Councillor Ioannidis is considering. Certainly there are programs available in the community to support those that have difficulties, elders, people with mobility constraints in terms of doing work around the house. And so wondering if, when you mentioned Snow Angels, that would be the type of program that, for example, community support groups and those types of things would offer? Or are you thinking of something else, Councillor Ioannidis? More information would be helpful.
To be honest, I'm not sure 100% what I'm asking for, because I know I don't want to open up a huge can of worms. But I just want to be able to assist those residents that are, maybe they, with a lot of them are bagging and on top of the additional of the pickup, but I don't want to have us do more pickups. So,
Mr. Chapman?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd suggest that between now and the future meetings, we can take this away with Councillor Ioannidis to understand his interest better. I would remind Council that there are two very distinct issues here. One is maintenance that we perform within the municipal right-of-way or on municipal property. And so when we're clearing sidewalks and windrows, part of the reason we do that is because those are municipal assets, even though most residents are held responsible for it. My suspicion is, notwithstanding the intent of the program, that many residents are bagging or raking leaves that are primarily generated on private property. And the city is not in the business of performing maintenance services on private property. And so I think we can take this away and have some further conversation. And if in fact it's to address an issue with people with mobility challenges or other issues on private property, look to see what programs may exist to support in those needs. So we can take that away with Councillor Ioannidis.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Very good. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Chair Davey. And my question has something to do with really what I've been thinking about as I read the budget this weekend, and that overall we need to make sure that we are getting the small things right, because the small things are really big things for our residents, and that includes things like sidewalk repair. That's something that they see all the time. It's patching potholes in the roads, et cetera. And our staff do an amazing job going out and doing that and doing small repairs, because a lot of that is what we're able to do right now. It also combines with the capital budget, because there's the cost of all those supplies and everything. But I feel like sometimes, I heard from a resident about it this weekend, that they'll take a look at something that we do in terms of fixing one raised part of the sidewalk, yet we've left a big indentation there at the same time, because were planning on coming back at some point. But for them, they're looking at that type of thing and thinking, they're not completing the job. Like, what piece of this looks right to them? So I guess that's what I'm trying to ask is, when we look at our operations budget, are we putting enough money into those types of things that really matter to people who, maybe they're not people who come and attend a lot of our events, which are amazing, but the small things on their streets, their boulevard trees getting replaced, not within 3 years, they're hoping for more like a 2-year turnaround. Those types of things are really important for people. So I'm wondering about kind of our overall approach and whether or not we are putting enough money and enough staff into our operations side.
Ms. McGoldrick.
So through the chair, thank you for the question, Councillor Johnson. I would say our philosophy in terms of the operating budget and the operating budget increases has been to maintain existing service levels based on as you noted, the rising costs of materials and ensuring that with the growth of the city that we're resourced appropriately to expand services at the same level of service. And so given the tax-based target of managing within or as close to the 2-year rate of inflation as possible, that has been the focus of the budget. And through the capital budget, you'll see that there has been an increase in one of the line items related to concrete sidewalk repairs. And that's to adjust to the inflationary costs of concrete to be able to continue to do that work. I think to your point around, you mentioned specifically the asphalt ramping work done, that is really to meet minimum maintenance requirements to address surface discontinuities within a certain time period per our sidewalk inspection. And then you're correct, we come back and do permanent repairs. And when we do permanent repairs, we try to do a larger section within to address all of the surface discontinuities within a larger area. So sometimes we'll hold back to be able to plan and budget for a larger replacement work. So I know that you shared a number of services there, trying to respond to some specific services, but truly the philosophy is around maintaining existing service levels within our ability to, as near to the rate of inflation as possible.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that answer. I am concerned about things like putting down, the tar. I'm just going to call it tar. I'm not exactly sure what you call it. Tar repairs at this time of year, and a resident looks at that and says, "You're doing this in the fall. It's going to snow in another month, and my snow blower is going to remove that." Like, how are some of the stopgap things that we're looking at doing? Are they lasting? Are they making sense? And that truly is what we hear from our residents, right or wrong on that, but that is what we hear.
Mr. Chapman?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think this builds on a theme that we've heard from council over recent budgets, which is that before we focus on things that are new, let's make sure that we're doing the existing service as well. And so we've heard that loud and clear. I do think that the $1 million allocation you have in front of you does present an opportunity to make investments in areas that you want to increase the service level. Good examples in the past have been trail paving, where with infusions of funding, we've been able to accelerate that program. Playground replacements are also referenced here. And so I would suggest between now and the time that proposals are due to come through the budget, if there are things that are top of mind that you'd like to explore, by all means, connect with staff and we can help you understand, for a certain level of investment, what would that buy in an area like road resurfacing, playground replacement, sidewalk improvements? And then if there's a proposal then that you want to bring forward, we could provide you with the information to do that.
Well, you read my mind on that. That's certainly something I intend on bringing up, but thank you.
And so certainly if members of council have interest, feel free to reach out to me or any department head and we're happy to work with you on that.
Okay, thank you. There's no one else in the queue. I just want to thank staff for all the work. I'll thank you more thoroughly the final budget meeting that we have. It is only for information item, but I think it's important. We had some good discussion that we take a motion that it be received for information. So could I get a mover for that? Moved by Councillor Ioannidis. Those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, there's nothing stopping us from going into special council, well, only 8 minutes, but early? No? See you at 4:30, guys. Good work.